Hey friends, so I hope you find this response to be kind, helpful, and respectful. And for anyone who is interested in you yourself, check out part 1 where I respond to one of the first videos that you made in response to me. With that said, let me give you some citations. So this article published in the Tyndale Bulletin, the correspondence between Romans 1, 18 through 32 and 12, 1 through 2, and the unity of Romans 12 through 13. But here he says humans are chiefly described in terms of the fall of Adam in Genesis 1 through 3, and gives a source there and continues, when that fact is kept in mind, we can see a close symmetric correspondence between Romans 1 and 12, which is supported by extensive common vocabulary, and gives another source. In fact, virtually every phrase or clause in the summary statement about the Swiss, I'm probably saying that wrong, of the redeemed in 12 can be seen as set in antithesis to the statement about the Swiss of the fallen Adamic humanity in Romans 1. Here's another article re-examining Romans 1 through 8 with the Pentateuch by James Howard. Here he says he also uses numerous conceptual and linguistic links to the Pentateuch to lay a foundation for understanding Christ. And he continues on with that and quotes Watson, arguing that Paul's theology is intertextual in form, in the sense that it is constituted by its relation to an earlier corpus of texts that function as communally normative scripture. He goes on further, saying that Paul cites individual texts, not in an ad hoc manner, but on the basis of a radical construal of the narrative shape of the Pentateuch as a whole. Now, these two articles are not dealing with homosexuality specifically, but they don't have to establish my interpretive point here. My point is just that the created order interpretation of Romans 1 here is supported by the fact that Paul is using Genesis 1 through 3, and he's clearly using the rest of the Pentateuch in Romans to establish his theology. And based on the work of the affirming Christian that I quoted earlier that agrees with the created order interpretation of Romans 1, we see that Philo and Josephus and probably the other Jews of his day would not have disagreed with him on the subject of what he's talking about in Romans 1, and even the bringing up of homosexuality in Romans 1. So in this video, you talked about how homosexuality was used in war, and while that is really interesting, I don't see how that applies to Romans 1, especially with the interpretation that I gave. You also mentioned the Mosaic Law, and I have not studied those texts as much, so I will refrain from comment. And I would also agree with you that homosexuality has nothing to do with the story of Sodom and Gomorrah, and I do think that that is one of the long-standing interpretations in the Judeo-Christian tradition that is overturned by the data. There is no evidence to suggest that. However, I will make a separate video on my account addressing that issue. Thank you so much for the conversation, and I hope this stuff helps you.